Today I'm sharing with you reflections on mealtime from a new-ish mom. So my son's about 12 months old, not exactly a new mom, but I'm kind of coming out of, I'm coming out of the first year and can really reflect on what life has been like now that I have a baby, and that definitely impacts mealtime. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm Allison Schaaf, chef, dietitian, and founder of meal planning website prepdish.com. And with that background, it kind of gives me an interesting perspective on mealtime. So I've spent the majority of my career helping other people get meals on the table in a more organized fashion. So having my routine and schedule and life shifted drastically with adding baby, it really gave me a new perspective for meal times and family meals. So here are some of the tips and tricks that I've used in the first year to help make sure that meals still happen. Number one, this definitely has not changed, and that is have a plan. So the more you can have a plan in advance of what you're going to eat, the better. So don't wait until 6 o'clock at night to try and figure out what's for dinner. Try to carve out time in advance to know what you're going to have for the week. Sometimes I map out I have my fridge, and here's the 6 meals that are going to be in the fridge for the week, and we can kind of shift them as needed. But I will say, when baby came along, this is something that did shift, and that is I actually planned out day by day. So, and I wrote it out. I'm sorry for the awkward bending down. I have something I want to show that really helped, and this was new for me, was having a whiteboard. I know it sounds silly, this is like $5, $10 on Amazon. Some people have like a chalkboard, which is really cool, but having some sort of system for writing out the meals was super helpful, mainly because our house got a little more hectic and that I wasn't always the one there at mealtime trying to pull out the meal. I had family in town often, or if my husband was pitching out, it was just nice to have it written out in a separate location that wasn't just my head. So I wasn't the keeper of all of our meals. That's why transferring it on to a separate document of some sort, it eliminates you from being the only resource that knows what's for dinner. It has it written out. And sure, people can go through the fridge, but maybe they don't quite understand. When you start digging through the fridge, you don't necessarily know what the plan was if you've already halfway prepared the meal or something like that. So having the menu written out in a separate location was something that really helped when we had baby. Another thing that helped me a lot, so I'm big on meal prep, and I've always told moms that they should meal prep during nap time. I sometimes get some pushback that during nap time is the time for moms to sleep as well. And I get that. But I will say I totally did meal prep during nap time. So I've been saying it for years and kind of hoping that wasn't, horrible advice, but I actually took that advice and did a lot of my meal prep during nap time. I would also find ways to do it, and it really depends on the stage and the age of the baby, but there were certain tasks that I could do while I was wearing him, or maybe while he was napping nearby. As he's gotten older, that's kind of shifted. But really, nap time has been a good time for me to do the meal prep. And it's been really helpful to kind of get everything done. It's this whole idea of doing the tasks when you have time and not doing them because it has to be done at this moment. Just because I want to make dinner at 5:45, now that there's a baby there, that doesn't mean that he's going to want me to make dinner at 5:45. So I need to have tasks that I can do whenever. I can chop that carrot at 4 a.m., at 2 p.m., or at 6 p.m. And it's really not up to me in that, especially those first few months. When I chop that carrot is not up to me. That's really dictated by baby. So having those meal prep tasks, having them listed out, and knowing that they need to be done, but the time that I actually do them is flexible, was really helpful for me. That was more probably the first half of the year. After 6 months, I feel like we really had a routine and things were a lot easier to plan and figure out. So the first 6 months were really the most hectic in terms of mealtime. And then actually the second 6 months have been interesting because now he's eating with us. And so that brings on, I guess, a new challenge in terms of timing, because we have to make, I like to have us all have family dinner together. And so figuring out that timing, but because he's on a schedule, it's really opened us up to not have to scramble as much and just really have more of a routine, which has been nice as well. And then this is sort of related to the, doing the meal prep in advance, but really making sure that I was doing the prep once, eat, 2 or 3 times. So as much as I could, whenever I had a recipe that I was making, I would double or triple the amount, either so we could have multiple meals that week, but if it was something like a soup or a stew that could be frozen, then I made sure to put some in the freezer as well. So I would have kind of those freezer meals on hand, and that worked really well. It's a practice that I was doing before baby, but afterwards it just became a lot more important and a lot more of a lifesaver, I guess you could say, to have those freezer meals ready to go. The last piece that I want to talk about is something that was a lot harder for me to do, especially in the beginning, and that was to delegate the meals. So if some of you are the ones that have always been in charge of your meals, have always been kind of the cook in your house, I don't think it was necessarily thought out like, oh, I don't want to give up cooking, because there were definitely moments where I'm like, man, it would be nice if someone could just cook for me. But I think when it came down to it, I felt like that was kind of my role and my responsibility. And so asking people to take over that role, we've had kind of we've shifted through a few different forms of childcare in his first year. We started out with a nanny and then an au pair, and even asking them for help, which, that was part of the job that we talked about in advance, but that was really hard for me to do. I think part of it was the fact that my role is with Prep Dish and creating meal plans, and teaching moms how they can do all of this. And you can, but it's also okay to ask others to help. If my mother-in-law was in town and she wanted a task, I could delegate some of that out. Same thing with a babysitter. And that's something with the childcare that we would always discuss in advance, is I would always mention, are you okay with helping with meal prep, or can you help with some chopping of like veggies and those sort of items. So I'd always ask in advance before we would even get them in the house if that was something they were comfortable with. But then once they were there, sometimes I would struggle to actually hand off the task. And so that was something that I struggled with, but then once I did it, it was so nice. So nice to have that help and the support with the cooking and the meals and the mealtime. You can't do it all. And that's the thing. When you've got a little one, you've got to figure out like, what do you have to do and what has to get done, and what can you delegate out, or where can you maybe even like be a little more lenient, maybe in that first month you're ordering takeout more than you usually do, but that's okay, because you're keeping a baby alive. And at the end of the day, you have to be okay with what you've done in the baby department and realize everything else will be okay and function, and kind of let go of some of those tasks that maybe you've held on to. So that for me was something that I think as I go on, as we start to build a family and I get more into that, I'm going to be less hesitant to hand over the meal prep and help with that, and realizing that that's the beauty too of having the meal plans, is that I can have people help out with that piece of it. So that's been really cool to think about and plan for, and to just know that I can be supported in that way, and that's okay. And it really kind of frees up my time to be with baby, because at the end of the day, in those first few months, he's so tiny and it all goes by so fast. So the more I can find ways to spend more time with him and less time on everything else, the better. And if that means delegating out some of the meal prep, then totally worthwhile and worth it in my book. Oh, and then another thing, so I mentioned the freezer meals. This was really helpful to do while, you know, in the moment I would double up meals and freeze some. But another thing that was such a lifesaver, and that was doing freezer meals before baby came. So I had a freezer full of 5 or 6 meals that could just be thrown in the crock pot or Instant Pot. And I have a whole video on that. So that's linked here. You can get on and watch that. I highly recommend those meals. And then I've also linked a video for one of those prep once, eat multiple time type of meals. Those have been really helpful now that we have baby.